Yeah, so this is going to be a weird video, impromptu. I don't do formal videos because I don't have either the monetary equivalent, the equipment. I just don't have the ability to do so. This is why all my videos are so bad, because the only device I own is my cell phone that has an internet connection where I can upload something. My laptop is like, I can't transfer. I've never been able to get my video transfer or any of the AirDrop stuff to work on my laptop ever. I have a MacBook Air and it's terrible. It's an M2. It is terrible. It has never worked properly. I bought it brand new, like off the shelf. Like I walked in and grabbed it off the shelf, and it was brand new when I bought it. It's been damaged by people stealing it and malicious hackers and all this other stuff. So the operating system's fine. I don't know if the firmware is. But this conversation is about logistics, understanding logistical warfare. We don't live in an era where warfare is a consistent, there are no warriors left, you understand? There are no warriors. The warrior ethos is instilled upon you when you go through Fort Benning. Been there, done that. Yeah, it's right on the wall when you walk into 30th AG. Big banner, it has a big sign that says the warrior ethos. And you're supposed to memorize it. You're also supposed to memorize the infantryman's creed. I am the infantry. Yeah, whatever. All this other stuff. You have this leadership thing. They give you this dog tag that says leadership on it. Government spending money. Somebody got a contract. It's just money. That's all it is to these people. It's just money. We got to convince them that they're sacrificing their future for a good cause, boy. That's basically what that is. You're not sacrificing because after you get out and you're a veteran, you'll be denied your rights for 8 years. Even if you only serve 3 years, for the next 5 years, they will deny you everything. If you end up injured or, handicapped or wounded or anything, good luck. Good luck, because you'll never have your rights again. They will spy on you constantly. It's unbelievable. It's annoying. It's really annoying. The federal government will never leave you alone. So if you value your privacy, don't join the military. You'll never get it back. The federal government will never leave you alone. And not only will the federal government never leave you alone, local law enforcement will always harass you. Always. And it doesn't matter if they're veterans or not. In fact, it's more annoying because the veteran law enforcement officers are more likely to harass you. They're more likely to push the boundaries of what's acceptable behavior and violate your rights. Just so you're aware. I'm speaking from experience. I am a medically retired veteran from the U.S. Army. I was in the infantry. This is a consistent fact. I've seen hundreds of veterans that experienced exactly the same thing as I have. And I'm not joking. Hundreds. I don't go to the VFW because I'm not interested in the good old boy club. And I never deployed to a foreign battle or a foreign war. I joined during GWOT during the peak in 2005. I didn't go anywhere because that's just how life is. Don't ask me. Sometimes life works that way. You end up with injuries and you can't do anything about it. And then you get med boarded and the Army's like, whatever, get out. We're going to harass you for the rest of your life. You're never going to have your civil rights back. That's basically how it is. And it's not fair. It definitely is not. And if anybody tells you that it's fair that you won't have any of your constitutionally granted rights anymore in the future, it's not fair. But that's how they treat you. And what can I do about it? I'm broke. Like, I can't even, I don't work. I can't get a job because I got labeled as a white supremacist for saying America first. The ADL ruined my future. The Stop Anti-Semitism lady, when she was talking about people that she went out and harassed and ruined their future, that's me. That's literally me. She's on that stage describing what they did to me. My name's David Harmon. I'm the guy who they did that to. Why? Because I said, I don't think it's right that Israel has so much say in what our military and what our government's doing when we don't live in Israel. We don't, okay? But the rest of this video, from here on out, it's about logistical support and understanding strategy. I, for anybody who doesn't know, I used to be a professional gamer in real-time tabletop strategy games. What this basically means is full-on scenarios, the stuff that Pentagon used to use, rather the Pentagon, not Pentagon, not Pentagram, the Pentagon. We're talking about the building people in the building that got cruise missiles back on that one September day. I don't remember the name of that day. That cruise missile or whatever that is. Pretty sure it's a cruise missile. Yeah. Good luck with your conspiracy in airplanes. I know what a cruise missile looks like. But I won a national level championship in 1985. I was 5 years old. I was a pro level competitor in full strategy games at 5 years old. I won't go into too many details, just understand that that's who I am, okay? I grew up extremely impoverished because my family was torn apart. Long story short, let's not talk about it. That's the long story short. And so, while I was growing up, I did a whole lot of tabletop. I found out I was actually pretty good at it. And one of the things you learn about is that there's two types of logistics in the military. There's operational logistics, and then there's logistics. And the difference is, it's not inconsequential. One is operational logistic is basically manpower. Where are your logistics teams at? And are your logistics teams in place at the time? And in order to teach this kind of stuff, the Pentagon used to do this tabletop and this computer simulation of the Civil War. They had simulations, like digital simulations, that went all the way back to the French and Indian War at one point. But they, this is the old Pentagon back when our military was competent, not the one that we have now where they just rely on shock and awe because, W. But we are in the modern era after post-W washing of the Pentagon. So now our Pentagon is dumbed down, as we can see by our chief of whatever he is. Major nothing, major nobody, major whatever it is. What's his name? Pete Hegseth? I'm not even going to try. That name is impossible for me to pronounce. That major guy. He used to be a major. But anyways, they used to teach all this stuff in the Pentagon back in the day. This is consistent with the way the Pentagon operates. Is they used to run through scenarios, do strategies, do statistics and probability tables, and run through it just like a giant game. Because technically that is what it is. It's a giant game. They're gaming a system. Gaming a system, if you don't know what gaming a system actually means, gaming a system means running a system in simulation until its completion. That's what gaming means. It doesn't mean doing something like messing with something. It means running the simulation until its completion or the results that you're looking for present themselves, or the system concludes that the results that you're looking for are not possible. And this is basically what simulations are. When you're doing tabletop, gaming the system means you run through the simulation making all the best choices you can until you end up with the result that's either positive or negative. You can't do anything about it. When you game a system, you're trying to make the best decisions possible that are within a linear fashion, because you can't predict the future, and you have to assume that you're going to do something in the future or be able or have the capability to do something in the future with the logistical support that you have now. And if you go far enough back, there was a point in time where the United States had no logistics whatsoever. And the military, the Pentagon themselves, used to actually train in an environment where there were no solutions. The no-win scenario used to be a training default in the Pentagon so they could teach people how to operate without logistical support and then understand the importance of logistical support so they would make plans ahead of time to develop a system by which a logistical system would by default defend itself or be resilient. And what this means is they invented logistics. The Pentagon did. If you don't understand the just-in-time system within the United States, how the grocery store has groceries that come here just in time, that's logistics. That is logistics. This came out of the Pentagon. All of it. The way our modern economy operates was designed by the Pentagon. All of it came into play during World War II. Most of it started in like 1937 because they knew the World War II was on the horizon. They already knew it was going to happen. They may have planned it. That might have been a thing. And the reason why this conversation is so vital, why I'm bringing it up right now, is because in the late 70s, there were three organizations that basically ran the West. It was Mossad, the FBI, and the KGB. They ran the United States. And the reason why it was Mossad, the KGB, and the FBI is because the FBI was the premier intelligence gathering force that was resisting both Mossad and the KGB. The CIA was fully compromised by 1975 by the KGB, fully compromised all the way to the top. The deputy directors were compromised by the KGB, and the KGB was open about it. The CIA was even open about it. It was so bad that the deputy director of the CIA himself had even stated when he was the vice president of the United States that the CIA was fully and completely and utterly compromised. If you don't know who that man is, his name is George Herbert Walker Bush. George Herbert Walker Bush was a former deputy director of the CIA. He was Ronald Reagan's handler, and he himself admitted that the KGB was fully entrenched in the CIA, that the CIA was compromised. Now, if you understand what this means, it also means that whoever compromised the KGB had also controlled the CIA. Israeli Mossad, by 1979, had almost entirely infiltrated the KGB. So, Israeli Mossad was running the KGB, who was basically running the CIA. And to understand how we can prove this, there were some trade deals that went on between the Soviet Union and Iran right after the Iranian Revolution. The Iranian Revolution was funded by Israeli Mossad, along with the CIA. So the Israeli Mossad funded portions of the Iranian Revolution. Obviously, we know how that went. Not so good. Or did it? It went well for the Israeli Mossad, because not even 2 years later, Israel was bankrolling both sides of the Iraq and Iran war. Both sides. They funded, loaned money to, and sold weapons to both sides of the Iran and Iraq war. Now, if you understand what that means, we can skip ahead a decade and notice that Iraq was later invaded by the United States and the rest of NATO. They were attacked, de-armed, and disenfranchised and collapsed. And then they were sanctioned into poverty for another 13 years. Now, if you don't know why that happened, we can look at what happened with the payments from Iraq to Israeli Mossad and how they ceased to happen because Iraq went around the payment system that the West had established of them paying the West in the form of oil and taxing that oil, skimming right off the top of it, which is how Iraq had agreed to pay off Mossad and Israel for that debt that they owed them. Now, KGB was responsible for the Soviet incursion to Afghanistan because this KGB had developed this idea, this formula, this plan of how they could move into Afghanistan to seize the natural resources of Afghanistan and establish a front next to Iran where they could also build pipelines through Afghanistan to tax both the transmutation of oil to Pakistan and China as well as to southern Russia. They wanted to build a pipeline in Afghanistan, and the KGB had convinced them that they could do so. Now, at this time, the KGB was almost entirely infiltrated by Mossad. So Mossad, seeing a chance to take down the Soviets, which would disenfranchise the Russians and make it more difficult for the Russians to resist any kind of Israeli influence within the region, they went right with it. They're like, okay, we're going to feed them information. And next thing you know, the Soviet Union's collapsing because the Soviet doctrine relies almost exclusively on its shock troops, which, if you're aware of how World War I went, the Germans had the same military doctrine. The Soviets relied almost exclusively on their shock troops. So their Spetsnaz soldiers, when the Spetsnaz would go into an area, they would hit a city or hit a village or, whatever it was they were attacking, have air support, which they developed during their time in Afghanistan, and then train up anybody they found around through conscription. That's how the Soviet doctrine worked. Unfortunately, since the ground troops, the average infantrymen that the Soviets had were very poorly trained, not saying that they were incompetent, they were very poorly trained by the standards of the modern military. They would go into Afghanistan and they would get routed. They would get wrecked. Tanks, T-32s, T-52s, T-54s, all the way up, wrecked. All of their tanks wrecked. The Afghanis were absolutely atrocious towards them. Now, we now know that the Afghanis were just the Mujahideen, who was basically Osama bin Laden and all Osama bin Laden's friends. And the Mujahideen, who were propped up by the CIA, were also friends with Mossad. They got loans from the Mossad. The agents that were affiliated with the CIA and the Mossad, well, the Israelis brokered the deal, okay? They brokered the deal between the CIA and Mujahideen. They were the go-between. So every time they interacted with them, Mossad was already there. So they already knew what was going on from the Soviet side, the KGB side, and they also knew what was going on the CIA side and the Mujahideen. So they were playing both sides and making money off of both sides. The same as what they were doing in Iran and Afghanistan. Iran and Iraq. They played both sides and sold to both sides. So now you can understand why we noticed that Likud was funding Hamas. Directly funding Hamas and Hezbollah. Directly through the government, which means we're also aware that a Jewish president, of the United States, Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, whose mother was Jewish, an Israeli as well, also funded Iran. So when we look at the situation, and now we're fighting against Iran, it's just the same script. Like, this is the same script we've been playing for the past 40-something years. It's still going. And the reason why this is so important, because the Pentagon used to teach logistics. And the reason why the Pentagon used to teach logistics is because you can always find the culprit behind logistics. Wherever they're getting their material goods from, whatever their material goods, if it says it's from some place, this certain place, it's either from that place or it's not from that place. And if it is from that place, how'd they get it? Logistical support. Everything breaks down to logistical support. All of warfare is logistics. Whether they're sourcing their pagers from Europe, which is a criminal act, committing terrorist acts in the support of their long-term mission, which is also illegal. We go back to logistics every single time. And the reason why we go back to logistics, because we know what it looks like when there are no logistics. Genuine analog warfare that's naturally occurring between nationalities. And then we know what the hybridized manufactured warfare looks like when the opposition is armed to the teeth. The scale of their weaponry and the scale of their activity will always indicate where they're getting their logistics from. Always. There's no way to escape it. That they knew that this organization was going to purchase a certain item indicates that they have people inside of said organization, which means they knew the extent of it. That they knew how many of certain items they had to produce tells you they knew exactly who was in it. How does it tell you exactly who's in it? Because they knew how many of this item to produce. They knew exactly how many people were involved. And they were funding it. So, this is a trend. This is not like an incidental thing. This didn't just happen once. As I've just told you, like, this is a pattern. This is a pattern of maleficence. This is maleficent. All of this is malicious. It's a pattern of abuse. Abuse of trust, abuse of economy, and abuse of faith. Bad faith actors. For what? It's an abuse of trust. This entire system now is nothing more than one giant abuse of our trust. There's no reason to support it. Why would anybody want to support it anymore? I have no interest. I can't get any. It's like you say that, oh, I'm not on Team America. Where's Team America? We have real problems here. We have actual problems here in the United States. But we're spending money that we can't replace this money. Nobody can. Do you understand how many trillions of dollars a year we're spending on stuff that we're never going to see a return on this? You think Iran is going to rebuild? It took Iran 1,000 years to have the economy that they had in the 1950s. That's like two cities. That's like two cities. Iran is like the size of Florida. And you're like, oh, the landmass is much larger. Yeah, most of it's desert. Iran is like the size of Florida. The actual usable useful landmass of Iran is maybe the size of Florida, if you're lucky. Where's oil? Oil's not that valuable. Oil is so common. It's one of the most common things in the world. We have so much oil that we have to shut down wells to keep the price of oil above the median. What that means is we have to shut oil wells down using government regulations to keep the price of oil above bankruptcy level for many of the wells. Like half the wells would go bankrupt and have to shut down if we didn't force a percentage of them to restrict the amount of oil they extract out of the ground. We have so much oil that it's not even funny. Even in the United States, our oil reserves are massive. We are never running out of this stuff. Like, we would have to burn at a continual rate for 100 years constantly to even have any issues with being able to supply. Our supply issue, just with domestic oil production alone, we have at least 100 years. At least. We should be well off of oil and onto a nuclear electric system way before that. Way before that. We have fusion. I don't know how much of you know anything about fusion. We have functional fusion systems that generate net positive returns. Today, right now. We are not hurting for oil. So the question is, the entire war with Iran is what? Because Israel? Because they threatened Israel? That guy's dead. And I don't recall in the Constitution where it says, where the Constitution says that the United States must get revenge for anybody who's threatened by another country. So if two different countries are threatening each other, the United States must be involved with it without. We're involved with NATO. Like, we have a treaty with NATO. We don't have a treaty with Israel. There's nothing. The agreement with Israel is what? A handshake, a wink, wink, and a nod? Really? We have nothing with them. What? The agreement with Israel is a blackmail scheme? Okay. They'll get you a thumb. Okay. Yeah, okay. So, in our history, we can look back and we say logistical support says Israel was involved in Mujahideen directly. We know that for a fact. They've already came out and said it. They even came out and said, yeah, we helped take down the Soviets. Yeah, sure. After you guys, you were buying, what is that Galil patterned after? Oh yeah, the Galil. After they were trading with the Soviets for decades, they decided to infiltrate the KGB, which they had already infiltrated, and take down the great evil empire. Yeah, the Soviets used to be called the evil empire by the neoconservatives. That's what they called them back in the 80s. The funny thing is, the neoconservatives, if you know anything about the neoconservatives, they were hardcore communists in the early 70s. Like, they were uber frigging Nazbol style communists, like national communists. I don't know if you know what a Nazbol is, but all this Duginism, Dugin, however you pronounce that guy's name, Alexander Dugin, they were all this whole Nazbol thing where they were national communists, basically racial communists. They were like eugenicists that wanted to bring in genetics from foreign nationalities and ethnicities to intermix and create this eugenics program in the Soviet Union. Alexander Dugin is his name. Yeah, he's still around. He's still kicking, except now he's in Israel and the United States. So now you understand who these people are. They're Duginists. They were Duginists back in the early 70s. Duginists are not religious. Alexander Dugin rejected religion. He rejected it 100%. He was absolutely abhorrently against religion. And the neoconservatives are Duginists. They came out of that camp. They were the far left of the Israelis, or the Israeli firster crowd of the Democrat Party. They were all financiers. They were all bankers. All of them. Every single one of them was a banker. The early neocons back in the 80s when they started backing, they used to back Jimmy Carter. They backed Jimmy Carter until Jimmy Carter, he did something they didn't like, and then they pulled away from Jimmy Carter. It's like 1977 or something like that. They had like this verbal spat where they decided not to back Jimmy Carter for the 80s. And then in 82, when the midterms came up for Reagan and Bush, they backed the conservative, not really conservatives, but yeah, they were involved the whole time. And knowing that George H.W. Bush was a former deputy director of the CIA, meaning he had direct contacts with the Mossad, agents in the Mossad, and people who were affiliated with the neoconservatives, also were using former Mossad and active Mossad agents in their intelligence gathering for their investing. So we can ignore all this and understand that insider trading isn't just Nancy Pelosi. It's also when the intelligence agents are conspiring to commit treason and cause wars with foreign nations so they can generate a revenue and a return on it, make profit off of it. Oh, wait. Prescott Bush isn't a character anymore, remember? I love how everybody forgot that George Prescott Bush was a person. Everybody forgets that the Prescotts and Bushes were a thing. Soon as W got out of office and Obama became the new boogeyman with the bailouts, the bail-ins or bailouts, whichever they are, the endless QE, grinding inflation out for another 15 years that only ended in 2019. And then affordable health care, the biggest news article in the world. Yeah, they had to cover up the QE operations. And they also had to make sure that nobody remembers George Prescott Bush, the guy who made the original deal back in the Saudi era, back in the day. The big oil financiers. Yeah, everybody forgets about this stuff. Why was George Herbert Walker Bush in the CIA? He bought his way in. Go look and see how, I recommend it if you go read on how he got into the CIA. It's quite interesting. He ended up in the CIA, or as a deputy director of the CIA, because he was put into place as a deputy director of the CIA. He was put there because of his father's connections with the Saudis and Israel. That's the only reason he was there. He has no qualifications to be in charge of any intelligence operations whatsoever. He was a pilot in World War II. Not that he was a bad pilot. He ended up joining the naval. He was a Navy pilot, obviously. He was very late in the war. Like, he wasn't there at the beginning. He was more towards the end of the war. And I'm not disparaging his service, but he had no qualifications to be in charge of the CIA. He had no education for it. He had no training for it. He'd never been on any field ops or anything of that nature. He'd never been in on anything. But here he was, deputy director of the CIA. Wild how that happened, because his father's connections with the Saudis and Israel. You guys, Don't fall for it. Don't fall for any of this stuff. It's like, this isn't a different reality. It's like our current admin, he's bluster. He's always been that way. He's Hollywood. He's basically just New York tier Hollywood. He's always going to say stuff. He's always going to be in your face. Any man that doesn't put his hand on the book when he gets sworn in can't be trusted. It means he's going to betray you. And then he does it every time. He's got like this cyclic thing down. Like every fortnight, he'll betray you, and then 2 weeks later, every 14 days, he flips. Every 14 days, he flips. It's like he's got it down to a science, like somebody did some clinical studies and found out how he can manipulate a group of people the longest amount of time. And look at it, like it's obviously working because nobody's doing anything about this guy. We have people of quality leaving the administration. I'm not going to name anybody. I don't think either one of them, like, leaving because of reasons or getting terminated. We've had 2 people of notable quality leaving and 1 person getting terminated. Whether you think one of those persons is of good quality or not has nothing to do with the reality of the fact that he has a very long service record in a organization that is extremely difficult to be honest in because the organization itself operates in secrecy and on lies. So, are you going to trust either one? I don't trust anybody as a rule, for one thing. And another thing is, I definitely don't trust anybody in the news media in regards to, or anybody who might have a vested interest in a relationship of Israel and the United States before any of the NATO treaty agreements. Because we've been with Europe for 500 years. We have been in a either ancestral or combative relationship with other powers, including France, England, Germany didn't really exist, Italy, and Spain for the past 500 years. We've been friends with France for about 270 years. We've came to rescue France more than once. France has come to rescue us more than once. If France says doing something's a bad idea, it probably is. They were right about Vietnam. The French pulled out of Vietnam. They were there for 11 years. The French had been in Vietnam for 11 years when they pulled out. They were right about Vietnam then. We found out how right they were about Vietnam when we pulled out in 74, 75? We pulled out because there was no way to win. There's no way to win. It's a quagmire. You can claim all the military victories in the world you want, but if in the end they fall to communism, it's a quagmire. For those that don't know or aren't aware of what a quagmire is, it has nothing to do with a pervert on TV. A quagmire is a war that can't be won. You can't win it. It's attrition. So either the enemy is going to attrition you out or you're going to leave. That's a quagmire. You can't win it. The French knew what a quagmire is because the French have been in more than one quagmire. They have a very long history in warfare. The French history of warfare goes all the way back to the Crusades. All the way back to the Crusades. If you're not aware, Charles I. Charles I is also known as Charlemagne. His name is Charles. He's Charles I. He was the first crusader that wasn't British. The first non-British crusader. So, again, logistics. You need to go back and read what George Herbert Walker Bush was doing. I don't judge anybody based on why they left the government or the military or what the military did with their rank or their qualifications and schooling while they were removing them from the military. And the reason why is because people in positions of authority and power are extremely petty. When they are there because they were a political appointee, they are especially petty. And if anybody understands what a long protracted contract means, and when you have a long period of either peace or warfare, you end up with either wartime politics or peacetime politics. There's two kinds of politics when you're in the military. If you're under wartime, the guy with the most medals on his chest or the most deployment patches or the most pretty stickers is usually the guy who's going to be in charge, even if he's never actually fired a round in anger. In the peacetime, the guy with the most schools is usually going to be the guy in charge. Military. The military has politics too. The schools don't mean much in wartime, it's deployments. In peacetime, the deployments don't mean much in schools. Did I say I agree with it? No, but that's just a systematic way of thinking. It's just how that system works. And if you are upset that somebody had their Green Beret revoked and you think he's a terrible human being, I don't care. He earned it. And as much as I don't care about modern day Green Beret stuff, because I'm old and I don't care about that stuff, because I don't agree with Empire. As much as I respect people of warrior caste, we don't have warriors anymore. We have logisticians. We have very highly skilled, very well-trained logisticians. Excuse me. I have a really hard time saying that word. Logisticians. They're logisticians. That's all they are. They plan these raids and all this stuff. They do it on their own. They plan this stuff. The president doesn't get to go ahead to anything. They train for it. They recognize a threat. They make up a packet and they train for it. And they train for it 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 until they're ready to go. And they ask if they get the green light. And then the only thing the president does is green lights or red lights them. And if they get red lighted, they they wind down and they train for something else. That's their pipeline. The president is not in the loop. He's not in the loop at all. He's not in the loop. Guy is not. What is that? Need to know. He's not on the need to know basis. He's on the hey. They have this mission planned up and they're ready to roll. Green light or red light. Green light or red light. I'm not trying to judge anybody in that community, or maybe I am. Maybe I'm trying to. You're guilty of being a bad boy. But the idea that this guy is in charge of this stuff, like no, nobody you see on the TV is in charge of any of this stuff. Nobody. Not a single person that sits on that television is in charge of it. They pretend like they are. Oh, I bet, yeah. I'm in charge of this. The guy in the background's laughing at him while he's saying, I'm in charge of this. Like, no, you're not. Nobody's in charge of that. And we now know that everything that's being done only benefits Israel. Why? Where did God Maduro? He was smuggling drugs. Yeah, all that did is open up a nice chain of an avenue right there. Let's not have that conversation again. Elon will get mad about being disrespected. Okay, Elon, be disrespected. I don't care. About being disrespected. And then we find out that it's true what I said. I bet that's embarrassing. And then we, yeah. I don't even know what I was trying to make this video about. I had a conversation with myself in my office, talking to myself, speaking to myself. I do a lot of that because nobody wants to talk to me anymore. I destroyed everyone in debate, and now nobody wants to debate me. Everyone's scared of debating me. I do hope all of you had a great Sunday. I hope you churchgoers went to church. I also do hope the best for everybody, except for the people who don't deserve it. You know who you are. Stay honest, work hard, and be aware that not everyone is honest, and some people are malicious. Unfortunately, it's a very large percentage of the human population. Like, oh, it's only like 2 to 5%. No, it's much higher than that. It's closer to 30%. 1/3 of all humans is malicious and actively scheming to screw someone over. 30%.